Have you ever wondered what it's really like to live truly off-grid while being in an RV but staying connected via Starlink? In today's video, we are totally going to take you guys behind the scenes of what it's like to work remotely in beautiful places across the country like we are right now, but as well as the unique challenges that we faced with this lifestyle. Starlink can work incredibly, but it can sometimes have its flaws. So let's dive in. Hey guys, so we're Gab and Bren, and we full-time RV. We have Starlink, which allows us to full-time work remotely. But the beauty with Starlink is that it's not only great for remote work, we can also be doing things like Brendan playing Xbox in the background here. So as much as I would love to tell you what we both do for work,
but before we get into too much detail on how we use it, let me show you how we have it set up. Okay, so getting up on the roof here, right here is our Starlink. This is a Starlink Gen 3. We got this one specifically because it has a removable kickstand on the back, and we were really interested by the idea of flat mounting this to the roof of our RV. So basically how we did that was we bought a mount online that was just attached with adhesive on the top of our roof here, and then that clicks right into the default kickstand that comes with the dish. Then we take the power cable and routed it behind our fridge, and all of that is powered by the rest of the solar that is on our roof. So we have another video going over our solar system and our battery system, so check out those if you're interested. Overall, this is how we have it set up, flat mounted to the roof. So one of the reasons why we set it up with this way is that we thought it sounded really cool to be able to get service and get connection while we're driving down the road. It's nice because we have it stationary, we're connected all the time, but then when we pack up and leave, we also have it while we're driving. So we like this setup because one, we could attach it all the time to the roof. We didn't have to worry about setting and putting it away every time we were coming and leaving from a site. And then two, this setup right here gives us the ability to actually detach the dish if we need to, and then run the cord to a spot that has a better view of the sky. One of the things that we knew we needed to have with our internet setup was very good reliability. Now, both of us work remote full-time, and we have for a few years. Probably 3 or 4 years ago is when we started dreaming of RVing, the ability to do our jobs and be able to travel and see different places as we did those same jobs. But we just weren't sure at the reliability of having like a mobile hotspot or using your phone for a hotspot. It really wasn't until Starlink came out that it started to seem like a real possibility that we could do this. So when we bought this RV, this is going to be our plan all along, that Starlink was going to be the primary source of our internet connection, but we wanted to try it out a little bit. So when we first bought the RV, we renovated the thing, we started living in it, and while we were stationary in it, we tried Starlink to see how it was in a stationary spot. It worked really well, it was super reliable for us, but you can only learn so much from being in a stationary spot versus moving around. So it really wasn't until we started to travel that we got a full sense of like how much of a complete sky view does it need, if it has a little bit of obstructions from trees, how much of a problem is that, how does it deal when it rains. All these kinds of things we kind of had to learn along the way. Now, at this point, we've had Starlink as really our only form of internet connection for about the past 6 months. So we feel like we have a pretty good idea of what it's good at, what it's bad at, but this is kind of how it works with our normal daily work setup.
Okay guys, so let's do a quick overview on what I do for work. What you're looking at here is actually my work setup. So I have a little laptop riser, and pretty much I can get all my work done from my laptop. But since I work in sales, majority of my work is actually taking video calls. So I use Zoom all the time. So having internet connection is incredibly important, and just having good internet connection, because anytime your internet drops, that video will then drop, and then you're not gonna be able to communicate with with whoever's on the other end of that call. This has definitely been something that I would say initially starting this lifestyle was a huge concern for me, just because of course job is my responsibility, that takes priority in my life. So I always want to make sure that I can show up professionally and get everything done correctly. But with Starlink, this has actually worked out to be really well. Overall, it's been a really great experience. So, I mean, if you're looking, you take a lot of Zoom calls, whatever it is, it's, you know, I would say as long as you're having a clear sky view, it's totally something that's manageable.
So while Gabby's starting her job inside, I'll tell you a little bit how I start my day. Also similarly with coffee, but I typically come outside on my laptop. I work as a UX designer, so like a web designer specializing in design systems. I typically only have like 1, 2, maybe 3 calls a day. So it works out really well with Gabby being in sales, very call focused. She kind of reserves the inside space when she has a call, and I can work inside as well with her on the couch or across the booth. But when we both have calls, that's typically when I grab my laptop and come outside. But that's basically how it works, like perfect scenario, nothing goes wrong. We'll get a little bit more into the problems later.
Okay, so we've gone over so much of the good of Starlink. Let's get into the actual performance and where we've seen some hiccups come into play. So for one, the obvious, you need a clear sky view for Starlink to work optimally. And so that's maybe a bit more obvious maybe than people think. And what I mean by that is that you can have a clear sky view, but if you're surrounded by tall trees, that's cutting off that view for Starlink to communicate with satellites. So we've actually found in our travels that at times this has meant a bit of sacrifice, that we've picked, I would say, a less desirable spot that has clear sky view over a very private spot that's incredibly covered, because ultimately our Starlink isn't going to work there. So a tip I would say for this is that when we find a spot, you know, we use like Campendium and iOverlander to find boondocking spots. We love using satellite view of Google Maps. This is a great way to look in an area so that way you can pretty much be prepared to understand, okay, does this have a good sky view? And I mean, what's even better than that is when people say on iOverlander are leaving reviews with photos that are very updated. So to everybody that leaves reviews, thank you. I like to think I'm one of those people because I'm trying to pay it forward, but definitely I heavily recommend using satellite view of Google Maps. All right, so the second hiccup that we have experienced with Starlink, that this was a surprise to me, but heavy rain will actually interrupt your reception that you get with Starlink. So when we first experienced this was when we were in South Dakota and a very strong thunderstorm came in. We were totally fine being in the RV, you know, we'll just stick in the RV and work, but to our surprise, the heavier the rainstorm got, the worse our Wi-Fi worked, until to the point that it cut out completely. This was definitely a bit of a scare because our Wi-Fi cut out in a tremendous thunderstorm and there was no signal, so we couldn't even hotspot. So these sort of things can happen in an RV. I suppose in the moment, there's not entirely too much that we could have done differently, but this experience definitely made us consider a cell booster. I think that that kind of is like a small insurance plan that you can have. And the super cool thing about cell boosters is that they're not on a subscription. So it's pretty much just a one-time fee for a bit of an insurance plan, whereas Starlink, of course, is a subscription. All right, third and final point that I have in regards to giving feedback on performance of Starlink, there's some randomness. So what I mean by that is that Starlink at times has just randomly no signal, no service. This doesn't happen a lot because the first time this happened to us, complete clear sky view, blue day, no rain, and pretty much our signal dropped for no apparent reason. We were like, maybe our power went out, what's going on? Maybe it'll reboot. Ultimately, we decided to reboot and then Starlink worked fine. So we thought it was a hiccup, but I would say that this has happened to us once every 6 to 8 weeks, that Starlink just kind of gives out randomly and there's no signal. Whenever we've encountered that we have perfect sky view, Starlink gives out for whatever reason, we reboot it immediately because we find that that is the fastest way to get Starlink connected to satellites again. We've tried waiting for this issue to resolve on its own. I would say that if you wait, it can take upwards of 15 to 20 minutes. If you decide to reboot it on your own, it could take anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes. So I suppose take that last point with a grain of salt. I wish it wasn't a point that we could throw in here, but unfortunately, due to our experiences, I think it's something good to know. But so far, you know, overall, I think Starlink has done a pretty good job aside from these small hiccups here.
So overall, even after all these hiccups that we've experienced, I still would say that Starlink is totally worth it. And that's even factoring in, we've been paying $150 a month to be connected, but they actually just increased the price to $170 a month. It wasn't great to hear this news of a price increase, which they can do at any time they want, but the service has served us so well that we're definitely willing to continue to pay the price. There's really, I don't think, any comparison like it. Basically, anywhere where there's a sky view, we can have great connection, minus a few hiccups sometimes, but you're not gonna get that with a cell booster or using your mobile phone for hotspot or anything like that. So overall, we're more than happy to pay the price that it costs. Thank you guys for tuning in. This is gonna do it for this video. If you liked it, please give us a thumbs up. And if you guys have any experience using Starlink like this, any positive or negative experiences, please leave them in the comments because we're definitely looking to learn more about it. We've had a few small things that we can't even explain, so the more experience that we share together, the better. Thank you for watching this video, and we'll see you next time.